It's nice to see so many faces in here.
Where are the rest of them?
They're at dinner.
Tired.
They're tired or confused because this morning didn't have us doing this. But anyway, so Randy Cassingham was going to introduce our speaker tonight. But he's sick, and his wife said, finish your work or go to bed, but don't come to this. He reluctantly caved into his wife's demands. So I will introduce tonight's speaker.
Here I am.
What was that, Miss Chris?
Here I am.
So Randy was going to say that the speaker started the twist of the news coverage on the Odyssey by walking from Belfast to Derry in what he started calling the Ireno. Kids walked 3 pilgrimages in Europe, plus now the Ireno. And tonight's talk comes from some lessons she learned in her first walk, the Camino de Santiago. So with that, help me welcome tonight's speaker, Kit Cassingham. Facebook introduced me to the concept of the 5 in 5 challenge. Get rid of 5 things every day for 5 days. And the idea is to declutter your life. I really fell in love with this concept, and I found that I started doing it fairly frequently, and it kind of became a way of life. In fact, after decluttering my parents' house so they could move, my rule was you can't buy one of that unless you get rid of the same sort of thing before you bring it in, so it can stay decluttered. The decluttering really helped me get ready for my Camino. They say you can't carry more than 10% of your body weight. And I weighed a lot less than I do now, and I'm going, I wouldn't be able to take anything then. So I became, I think, clever in figuring out how to double purpose things, to simplify what I was doing. I didn't take a rain hat and a sun hat. I got my sun hat and I waterproofed it. So one hat did both jobs. I carried a water bladder in my backpack so that I didn't have to always be fussing with the water bottle. So it felt simpler to me. That quickly became a whole way of living on the Camino. Keep life simple. My walking partner and I, and we then brought another guy into the group, we started a really simple ritual of get up every morning at about 6 o'clock, hit the road, and we loved watching the sunrises. And we would walk a couple hours till we'd find an albergue or a bar that was open for breakfast. And you're curious why I say we were waiting for bars to open for breakfast. Well, that's where they served it. And I'd been on the road for weeks before I go, oh, they call it a bar because that's what it is. In the morning, they serve breakfast. In the afternoon and evening, they serve alcohol. But anyway, that's also simplifying life. You don't need 2 buildings to do that job. But I found that the simplifying life really lightened the load. Now, I did not stick to the 10 pounds or the 10% of my body weight. I carried a whopping 20 pounds. But that included my supplements and my electrolytes. And people said, oh, you can't carry that much. Sure I can. It just won't weigh that much for long because I take the vitamins and the electrolytes daily. And I carried a 3-liter water bladder. They go, you can't carry that much. Sure I can. It won't be on my back very long. So I did what worked for me to keep me going on my Camino. And to do it simply. And when you fall into a ritual, like get up at 6, walk until 8:30, stop for breakfast, walk 2 hours, stop for coffee or lunch, and just make your day that way. Grab your bed by 3 o'clock so you have one for the night, and do your journaling, your laundry, have dinner, chat with your Camino family. All of that creates a nice pattern, and it keeps life simple. You don't have to think about it. So there was my first lesson in Simplify. When I walked my second Camino, the client who came with me didn't pay attention to my packing list, and I'll swear her backpack must have weighed 40 or 50 pounds. And so we walked a lot slower than I had scheduled, so we didn't have our down days for resting. That's okay. We just went with the flow, and I know flow's a dangerous word on this ship, but that's okay. So the first element for happiness is simplify. The second element is step at a time. Complaints I heard, or amazement I heard about walking the Camino is, you can't walk that far. Well, not in a day. The Camino de Santiago, the French way, is a 500-mile, 800-kilometer walk across northern Spain. And no, you can't walk that far in a day. But if you walk a little bit every day, you can do it. I took a couple of days off just to refresh and play tourist, and we still did it in 32 days. And I have little short legs. I still did it that way. So when you take life step at a time, you can probably do anything you set your mind to doing. So, step at a time is the second element for adding happiness to your life. Quit telling yourself, I can't, or you can't. Think about alternatives. How could you do it? Now, the woman who initially invited me to walk the Camino with her had planned on walking the pace of a pilgrim. And I didn't know what that meant until she one day explained that she and her husband had walked the last 100 kilometers in 10 days, and that's the pace of a pilgrim. I'm going, 10 kilometers a day is really slow. I don't know if I can walk that slowly. And when she wanted to do the full 800 kilometers, I said, do you realize that's 80 days and you scheduled 30 days from your life? Excuse me. So she didn't think she could do it the way she wanted to do it. Take it step at a time and figure it out. The third element for happiness is expectations kill. Drop your expectations. This became a mantra for me, and I'm going to grab some water before I cough in your ear again. I saw people having expectations of everything. The weather, their friends, their family, the albergues. Albergue is the lodging that they have along the Camino. And I just was so sad to see how it affected people. It started with a woman who I met through Facebook, who was walking the Camino, starting a few days behind me. And she bragged about her new boots, and I said, you be sure to break those in, because you don't want the blisters. She goes, I can't walk around my neighborhood. My neighbors will think I'm crazy. I said, please do some walking, break those babies in. She decided that she would let the Camino break them in. She found a wonderful albergue in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, where we started. She found a group of people she loved walking with, and they set out. Now, she didn't like the weather because it was cold and rainy / snowy and a little breezy, but she loved the people. And 2 days in, she had to stop because she had such bad blisters. She had expected her boots to not give her blisters. And when she started walking again, she didn't like the people that she was with. So she would take a cab ahead a few days, hoping to catch up with them. She expected to find people she could relate to and who loved her. she just kept making these interesting decisions. Then we hit a hot spell. And she said, I'm going to send all of my woolens home. And I said, no, do not. As a woman who lives in the mountains, trust me, it will get cold and wet again. She sent them home. Guess what? Her expectations killed her. It got cold and wet again. So she had to buy a whole new set of woolens. She lives in the southeast part of the U.S. She doesn't need wool clothing there, ever. And this ritual continued with her until she finally shipped herself home because she did not find any happiness. She expected to find people she liked. She expected the weather to be perfect. She expected the hotels to serve her every need. It made me sad. And that was just one experience. I did see people left and right. It's like shooting on your neighbors. They expected their friends and their family to behave in certain ways and want the same things they wanted. They expected their friends and family at home to be understanding that they were doing this interesting pilgrimage. They expected their spouses to read their minds and know what they wanted. And I just saw these little bickerings going on all along the way. And I found myself saying, expectations kill. Expectations kill. Drop them. So I started doing that for myself because I saw what it did to me when I expected things. So the moment I find myself thinking, you shouldn't do anything, drop that. And I don't know how to teach other people to do it. I just have to hope that they will learn it on their own. So I said in one of my promotions for this that I used these three elements, simplify, step at a time, and drop expectations, every day, or expectations kill, I use both. I used them every day since then. And I gotta tell you, starting on the adventure of coming on the Odyssey really has put them to the test. Now, I'm sure none of you have had to get rid of a house full of furniture and cats and dogs and cars, but we did, and we had 4 months to do it in. And this is after I've been simplifying for quarterly for years. We still had a boatload of stuff to get rid of. We got it all down to one carload and hit the road. And 2 weeks into, when I designed a 2-month tour around the country to say goodbye to friends and family, I was going to go on the Victoria Cruises trip.
Yes.
2 weeks into my trip, they delayed their trip 7 months, and we realized they're never sailing. They're going to take money and always keep delaying. We fussed and fretted for a little bit of time, and then we go, hey, we have everything with us that we own. We can just pivot, turn. And I realized by having simplified our lives, doing it step at a time, we could make that pivot. So we dropped our expectations that they should keep my life going the way I want them to. I started conversations with Odyssey again, and then we had to figure out what to do. So where do you live when you don't like heat, so you can't go to Florida and Texas and stuff? You have given away all your winter clothes. Where do you go? Well, we chose to go to Las Vegas. We had some friends there. They had extra space, and we stayed with them till we found our own little apartment. And we lived there for 6 months. For as little as I had, I was so disgusted when I had to pack it all up again 6 months later. I wanted to simplify some more. But the universe took care of that for me. UPS destroyed one of my bags. All right, so there's one bag less. And then we got to Belfast, and we moved so many times, different hotels, and I know you guys all got to stay put, but Randy and I moved and moved and moved. And I seem to have left little bits of my belongings everywhere I went. And I quit fretting about it after a while, going, it's all part of letting go. It's all part of simplifying life. So just let it go. The hardest one was the denim jacket that I'd spent so much time painting and making mine. It was beautiful. I mean, in a kid sort of way, it was beautiful. When you get to know me better, you'll understand that comment. And I still every so often reach for it, go, no, somebody else who needed it has it now. So it tickles me at how much easier my life is by having less. And as I sit in my cabin and I think, you know, you may have too many earrings, maybe you could get rid of some. They don't take up any space. But it is a burden on the shoulders, your emotional shoulders, I'll say, to have all that stuff. At least that's my experience. Let's see. So then, step at a time. I used to have a kayak, and I would kayak out on Ridgeway Reservoir. And after I got pretty good at it, one day I decided to kayak the length of the reservoir, get to the dam. And I was paddling along, loving the fall colors, and it was so smooth and easy, and got to the dam, and it was time to turn around, and the wind hit me. Of course, I was tired by the time I got to the dam. So I just started paddling, and I was looking at the shore over there going, I'm not going anywhere. It was really discouraging, and on the verge of tears, I thought, well, if I have to, I can paddle over to that shore. Oh, look how far I've come. I was going to take my kayak over there and walk the shoreline to dragging my kayak back. So by not looking at that shoreline, I got a better perspective, and instead of taking a step at a time, I took a paddle at a time. And I made it back. It was great. So sometimes changing your perspective and where you're looking helps you take that step at a time. Thank you. So the expectations kill, or drop expectations. Not only does that apply to your relationships, it applies to your self-conversation. How often do you should on yourself? You should know more than you do. You should have more money than you do. You should weigh a different weight than you do. We have so many rules that we impose on ourselves that we really kill our own joy sometimes. So what I learned by getting ready for my Camino was to stop that. Drop those expectations. Now that doesn't mean lower your standards. Keep your standards high, but don't expect people to adopt your standards. Your standards are part of your Harry Potter sorting hat, if you will. People who want to meet your expectations are people you want in your life. And walk away from the others. They'll come back to you if they're meant to be in your life. Self-love is so important. And when we don't should on ourselves, we are giving ourselves that self-love. And when you're not shoulding on yourself, you also increase your self-confidence. And that's when you can start doing things in life that you want to do, so that you can simplify your life. You can take life step at a time, and you can drop expectations on others as well.